guys, my name is Hannah and I am a digital illustrator, and I've been creating whimsical illustration on my iPad in Procreate for quite some time. I even illustrated 2 books in Procreate. But last month I treated myself to a new Cintiq Pro and I'm finally ready to make my first illustration in Photoshop. So let's see how it turns out. I've been kind of in an art block lately, so I decided to do a photo study to kind of break out of it. So let's dive right into and see what will come. I think it's always is a good idea to do a photo study, especially when you feel stuck, because you can just improve your skills and you don't need to think about any ideas. Just work on your skills and practice, practice, practice. And this is the photo that I found online on flickr.com. It's such a beautiful composition and I love the details. This beautiful photo was made by Patrick Hughes. You can find him on the Flickr and he has a lot of different photos which are all kind of amazing. I really like his work, so you should definitely check him out. So what I would do, I would save the photo and then I will open it in Photoshop. I decided to think about it, what I would like to add or change in to make this more my kind of illustration. So on Pinterest I created a board with a mood that I want to recreate in my illustration, and I have a few pieces in here. The thing with Pinterest is, unfortunately, you are not always able to see the artist behind the photo, and it is saved and pinned, and when you go to the picture it doesn't show the website or any other credits in here, which is not good because you don't know who did the photo, who can you credit, who can you mention, because it is an amazing work in here. But the Pinterest gave me the really good mood and direction that I really like to go. We'll go ahead and we'll try to find the artist behind those photos. You mention them in the description below. If not, I'm so sorry, and if you know the artist, please just let me know and I will happily add them to the list. And I thought, why not to go ahead and add the Bigfoot riding the rollers and just skating, rolling around along the street. I mean, like just being really happy. Okay, but we couldn't actually see his face. And I think I would like to add him, to make him a little bit bigger and to bring him a little bit more to the front. I really like the idea of him moving towards to the left, which is not the best composition because usually we'll read from the left to the right and everything is supposed to go to the right side. But I kind of think that it also might be a good idea to flip him up, to move him up here, rolling towards us, and just perhaps even add a little bit of a happy face. And perhaps he is wearing funny pants. I don't know, but I must say I kinda do like the idea with him facing towards us and rolling towards the right side and having a happy face. Kind of cool. So I think I will use this idea and perhaps I will add more details, more funny elements around it later on in my sketch. This is the kind of light mood I'm going for, like this upper row. I have it on my Pinterest, and this Pinterest board is open to everyone, so if you would like to see it or use it, please feel free. It is under the name Motel in my Hannah Illustrator page. As for now, we have the reference photo, the idea that we want to add. I also have the light direction that I want my illustration to be. And now the next step, I decided to make a character, the Bigfoot character. Usually I won't do that separately or an extra. I would just go right ahead and add the character on the illustration. But it kind of feels like it is important, and I really want this character to be really cool, and I just want to explore him a little bit more and then add him to an illustration. So this is exactly what I will be doing today. Yeah, let's jump right into it and create the new canvas and just work on the character and see where it will go. So the next step will be creating character design, then making a sketch, and then making light thumbnails. So this is the place where I decide where I play with the colors and see what will the final illustration look like. And if you want, you can just keep the steps and go right ahead to the point where you are more interested in this video. I usually do a lot of research before I start on my character design, but there are not a lot of reference pictures of Bigfoot as it is a fiction character. That's why I decided to just jump in and try using different simple shapes, different proportions, and just see what I like the most. So I was going ahead and I already knew I am going to create a few different options and just see which one I like the most. I will definitely recommend working with the simple shapes beforehand because you can create so much more characters and so much funnier and much more expression characters if you just start with simple shapes and see what works best. And by that I mean use different proportions. Use, for example, like a shorter torso and longer legs, or longer torso and shorter legs, bigger foot, smaller foot, big head, and just have fun with it. But if I'm being honest though, I do not always create characters beforehand, especially if I do a photo study. I would usually add a small bird or something like that and not really spend so much time on creating a character. But in this illustration, in this photo study, I really wanted to create a funny Bigfoot and then just edit and bring some life into the illustration. Hello friends! Today is the next day, as of course I haven't finished anything yesterday, just a few character sketches, and today I finished finally all of them. Almost. The next step would be adding some details to the characters, some clothing. My idea was to take this character style to more 80s, 90s. So I did a little bit of research and I found some ideas. I must say I'm really happy with those characters so far. I decided to make like 4 different options. It is already so hard to decide, and usually I don't do that many options. But for the sake of this video and for the sake of learning, working on my new Wacom Cintiq, I thought, why not? Why not? It's always fun, and I am so happy with all of them. They are also individual and also have like different personalities already, even though they are all smiling and happy. But this is the vibe that I want to add to my illustration. I already have this in my head and I can't wait to take to the next step and to share it with you and just work on it together. So I finished my character designs. I'm not sure which one I will decide to take into my illustrations, so we will see. But for now, I also sorry for the light in here, for changing the light, because it started raining and it's got really dark in here. But yeah, so I created a new canvas with a size around 4200 pixels. With height is 2500 pixels with 300 dpi. It is similar to the study that I did in here, like the proportions should be similar to the photo that I expanded, because this is the ratio that I wanted to keep. And if you're doing a study as well, so perhaps you can just see the proportions of the photo and whether you like it or not. Just see what works for your artwork. So this is how I'm going to work. I have the photo on my iMac, and then I have my canvas in here, and I will be sketching out the layout of the photo in here while looking at the picture on the bigger screen. At this stage, I would make my canvas pretty small because I want it to feel more like a thumbnail, and it is more like a thumbnail. I'm just figuring out where everything will go. It's really fast and rough and without any details, just seeing if the composition works, if I need to add something or remove something. Okay guys, I finished the really rough sketch and now I will be going more into the details as far as I want to and as far as I feel comfortable with before I'll start coloring or first of all add the character. At this stage, I would lower the opacity of my rough sketch and just draw on top of it, but on an extra layer. And here I would go more into the detail and just clean up all of the sketches. And sometimes I just go way too into the detail, which is not that good. And I wouldn't recommend that. I would say just go and be more rough. As you see, I am changing my canvas size as it wasn't working for me at this stage, and that's totally fine. You are totally free to change it at any time if you need it. Just see what works well for your composition. As I am finally done with my clean sketch, I also added my character, but I didn't film it. I'm so sorry. But at this point, I am just copying my sketch into 4 fields. Sometimes it would be like 6 or even 3. It doesn't matter. But here I will be figuring out what color direction I wanted to go and to see what works well and which mood I like more. For that, I opened my Pinterest board on the left side and just look onto the inspiration, as I wanted my colors to be more realistic, inspired by the nature. And this is the kind of information I don't have in my head, and perhaps in the future I will be that, I don't know, not creative, but skilled in coloring and adding light. But for now, I'm just always using references, as I feel like it is the most efficient and the most helpful way to do the color. And sometimes I also use like different hue and saturation settings, mostly on my Procreate because it's my first time doing it in Photoshop, but I really like doing it also in here. So just feel free, play with the colors, play with the light, and see what works. Also, my final colors in my final illustration are not 100% the same as they are on my color thumbnails, and it is totally fine. It's the process. Also, I did all of the 4 color thumbnails, but I just forgot to film the last one, which is totally fine, but it's not the one that I chose. I'm starting by setting my sketch to a multiply mode and lower the opacity. It is the same as I do on my Procreate. And here I'm just cutting out the color thumbnail that I really liked and the one that I'm going with. I'm putting it a little bit smaller onto the left corner of my canvas, so I just can pick any colors that I need and that I like. And I will just go ahead and add really rough shapes. Some of them will be made with the lasso tool, some of them are not. But I'm just going with the rough shapes, with the bigger shapes, and going then even smaller and more into the detail. But for now, I'm just figuring out all of the colors for all of the main shapes and seeing whether they are working or not. The start illustration will be a little bit different as it is on the color thumbnail, as I will be adding the light later on. So please don't wonder why it is so much different to what I am going for. The lasso tool in Photoshop is a bit different to the lasso tool in Procreate. And by that, I mean in Photoshop, you have an option to be like straight lines or freehand. But I really don't like the freehand option because it's like closes your line way too quickly and you can just edit it the way you can do in Procreate. And perhaps it's just like something that I need to get used to. So in this particular illustration, I mostly use the straight lines lasso tool, and I must say it took me a little bit of time to get used to it, which is totally fine because it's like my first illustration in Photoshop and it's totally fine. You need some time and experience to learn and just adjust to your new software. The one more thing that I really struggled while working in Photoshop is just figuring out what kind of brushes do I like, what kind of brushes do I want to use, and I just spent so many hours going through all of that brushes that I downloaded on the Adobe website and just trying them out. And you won't see that part in here just because it took me way too long and I had to cut out all of that footage just because In that way, this video would be like hours long. I had 13 hours of work, and there were like every step of the process, but it's way too long and it definitely not interesting. But it is something to think about when changing from one software to another. I googled whether I can transfer my Procreate brushes into the Photoshop, and it's kind of possible, but I need to do that manually, brush by brush, just like adding settings in Photoshop. And I think I will try doing that with some of my favorite ones. But yeah, at this point, I'm adding shadows using multiply mode on the extra layer on top of my main shapes. Sometimes I also will use the normal option of the layer. By that I mean not any different layer modes, just the normal one, and add the shadows with a darker color. It is also so depending on my mood at that point and what I think works best or not. And I'm just going back and forth with the details, adding light, adding shadow, figuring out all of the main shapes. And I must say at this point I went way too into the details. Sometimes I tend to do that. I'm still trying to learn to go simpler and bigger, but hey, it is a process, right? This particular video I did in a different format. I just did screen recording on my process just because I thought it could be also interesting to see the illustration in a bigger size, in a bigger format, in a better quality than just see my hands moving around into the work. And I really would like to hear from you whether you like this format and what do you think about it, because your opinion really matters to me. But also don't worry if you follow me because of the Procreate. I will be still doing my Procreate videos as I am a huge fan of it and I really like working in there. And I have already created another illustrations in Procreate. As I told in my unpacking video, I really wanted to have Cintiq to be able to work in a bigger size and a bigger screen, and also have more like space and more layers. And as you can see on the right side, I use layers a lot in Photoshop. It felt really freeing to like just add layer and layer on top, but which can be too much if you are the same as me and just don't name almost none of them. I just named the bigger forms, the bigger shapes, and then later on I just forgot to do that. So clearly I am not the expert in illustrating in Photoshop yet, but we will get there. So this is less of a tutorial, but just more taking you on my journey of creating this illustration. However, if we are talking about the process, it is still really similar to what I do in Procreate, and this kind of flow works for me. So that's why I also using all of my steps in Photoshop. The one thing though that is a little bit different to what I usually do is that in Procreate, mostly for my light and shadow, I use different layers mode, and in this kind of illustration in Photoshop, I also just use different colors. So not all of my layers are actually have some settings to them. So I just played with the color, experimented a lot, and at the moment you see all of the flat colors, like everything is way too green, and now I am adding more shadows as I felt like it is too bright and there is no contrast, and I really want to be it more like an evening scene. You'll see me turning on and off the light layer that I edited on top because I wanted to have this sunset feeling, and the sunset, the colors are warmer and yellowish reddish, and I just wanted to add this overall feeling to all of the elements in the illustration. That's why I created an extra layer on top. At some point, I decided that some of the shadows are not strong enough. That's why I went ahead and just darkened some spaces here and there, especially behind the bus and behind the hotel, the motel, I mean. At this point, all of the main elements of the illustration are finally ready, so now I'm jumping into more of the details, adding more light, more texture, more scribbleness to the illustration. What I like about the screen recording is that you can actually see on the right side kind of brushes I'm using, and to be honest, I haven't renamed them. So if you like any of the texture, you can just Google them and download them for free if you haven't had them already. So just to be clear, I haven't changed all of the colors manually. I just added a layer on top with an extra settings and filled it with a reddish color to give it this warm feeling. Usually I add all of my characters at the same time as I add my main elements, so I work on the whole picture at the same time. But this time I just felt like working on the background, setting the scene, and then adding my Bigfoot character. I don't know why, but it felt just right to do it so. Sometimes it just feels nice to play with the workflow a little bit, try new things out, be like bold and experimental. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I just wanted to try something else and see whether it works or not for me. And in this case, it actually worked. Almost the whole time that I'm working on an illustration, and let's talk about particular this illustration, I had my reference photos on the side. Like I have my color mode, color theme, color, just to have the reference and go back and forth and see how the light reflects and impacts the surroundings and the character. Since I don't have this all in my head or imagination, I always need my reference. Just in this case, you don't see it because it is on my other screen. So I just really encourage you, and I tell that almost in every process video that I make, like, use your references. It is so helpful and you just learn so much from them, and you just don't need to know everything. And as I was a little girl, I always thought that the painters and the artists, they all have this in their mind, and how crazy is this, and I would never ever be able to do this amazing work. But you know what, even the best of the artists, they use references, or not always from the photo references, but from the live. All of the live painting is the same as a photo study, but just like doing live, which is of course more complicated and complex than to do it from the picture, of course. But still, like, don't be scared to use references, don't be scared to look on other artists' work. Just, you learn so much from that, so go ahead and do that right now. As we're nearing towards the end of the process video, I just wanted to answer the question that I got asked on Instagram, whether I prefer iPad or Cintiq, and it is a simple answer. I like both of them and I will be using both of them. I do not prefer one or the other. Of course, I really like Procreate because for the past few years I've been exclusively working with Procreate and Photoshop and Cintiq. Just, I need some time to get used to it, to get faster and more efficient in this program, but I really do like both of them. I like how I can work with my Procreate at any place in the world and in any place in my flat, and I don't need to sit on my computer on my table. But I really like how big of the screen is of the Cintiq and how much into the detail I can go and how many layers I get, and that I can make my canvas so big and so detailed. So yeah, I will be working on both of them. In the end, I'm really happy that I made my Bigfoot going from the left to the right. How's the composition that the first thing that we see is the model sign, then the eyes go to the one cat and to the other, and then we go ahead to the Bigfoot and then back to the sign. And then we have this beautiful circle, this beautiful composition, and we have like where the eyes always in the middle of the illustration and on all of the important elements. Also, we have this Bigfoot sign on the right and our Bigfoot character on the left, and they are kind of facing towards each other, which makes a beautiful line between those two characters, which is kind of cool.
I can't believe I finally finished my first ever illustration on my Cintiq Pro. It is my first ever complex illustration in Photoshop, and I'm really proud of it. I love how it turned out, and almost exactly as I wanted to when it comes to the color theme and the character and everything. I'm so excited, and I really hope you like this video and like this illustration as much as I do, even though it took me it feels forever. It took me so many days coming to my table over and over again and just figuring all the things out. The problem was, and still is, that is I needed to explore all of the brushes that I downloaded and just trying to find the ones that I like and the one that gives the same feeling that I have with my illustrations on Procreate. But in overall, I am really happy. I love that I had the option to have as much layers as I needed to and as much groups as I wanted to, and it was so much fun, and I felt so free to have all of those options. I didn't do a great job naming all of them, but well, all of the brushes that I used were downloaded online for free. Most of them are Kyle's Paintbox, and you can download them on Adobe's website.
Thank you so much guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if so, please don't forget to hit the like button. As always, see you in the next one. Bye!